Hi, I'm Kumi. Welcome to my first video where I'm going to be talking about the ego and the relationship to our higher consciousness. We had a session this past weekend where I talked a little bit about those concepts, and then it became more of a dialogue as a group, um, which was like really beautiful and personal. So, in order to protect what happened in that session, I'm actually not going to be sharing that, but I will be sharing right now um, some of the main ideas that I wanted to was working with and presenting. Um, yeah, so I want to start actually with Carl Jung's definition of the ego. So he says to Jung, this is from a website, um, and I can add the link, the Journal Psyche. Um, so to Jung, the ego was the center of the field of consciousness, the part of the psyche where our conscious awareness resides, our sense of identity and existence. The part can be seen as a kind of command headquarters, organizing your thoughts, feelings, senses, and intuition, and regulating access to memory. It's the part that links the inner and outer worlds together, forming how we relate to that which is external to us. How a person relates to the external world is, according to Jung, determined by their levels of extroversion or introversion and how they make use of the functions of thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Some people have developed more of one. Okay, yeah. Well, that's like a quick um, overview. So it's your command center of yourself, the part that controls access to memory, and also the part that gives its interpretation of what our experiences are. Um, in Buddhism, which I practice in the Theravada tradition at Insight Meditation, in my practice, we talk a lot about awareness, a timeless awareness, which is, in essence, all that there is. There just is phenomena that's always arising, um, without the label of good or bad. It's just what is, like my cat's tail, that kind of thing. And then there's your perception. There's six senses in the Buddhist practice that I practice. There's sight perception. There's smell. There's hearing. There's touch, and there's what am I missing? Sight, smell, touch, hearing. Why am I missing one? I mean, I know I always miss one. I should have wrote this down. I'm trying to do this as intuitively directed as possible. Oh, taste. I'm going to forget taste. So sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch are the basic um, senses in the West, but in Buddhism, in the practice that I know, thought itself is a sense. Your mind is much like your nose or your ear. It has a certain way it perceives things, and that's through thoughts. Um, and also, I guess to some degree, unconsciously, it's emotions too. So that gives you a particular way of relating to the world where um, thoughts don't actually have to have anything to do with reality. Thoughts are phenomena that occur in the world just like anything, um, what you hear, what you smell. So that really helps me like have a different relationship to my thoughts because I used to take them on as part of my identity. So that's where you get that distinction between um, your timeless self within Buddhism, and then the ego self, which creates, like in the Jung way that he described it, it organizes all this information. So it says that this smell means someone's cooking, uh, and it might attach a judgment to that. Someone's cooking and it smells great. Someone's cooking and it doesn't smell good. Or a thought and perception. Like we start to identify with our ability to perceive, and that's why in meditation, a lot of times, what you're meant to be doing is, or at least in the practice that I know, is you attune to things like, okay, I'm focusing on my breath, or I'm focusing on um, my body, the phenomena. And I led a short in meditation when we met on Sunday. I can probably post that video. So it's like um, you sit with the phenomena. You sit with. You might be focusing on your breath, but thoughts will inevitably come. But in meditation, it's all about, okay, you develop this awareness that a thought has rose up, and you you pay you you consider what happened. Okay, a thought has rose up in my mind, and then you return back to the focus of your meditation, and it brings you more and more in sync with this um, timeless, infinite awareness and love. Those are two timeless states for within Buddhism, um, where what naturally happens in life is that we develop an ego and an identity. It comes from our culture, and it comes from our responses to experiences that we've had. It comes from, say, the profession you've taken on. My identity, which I talked about briefly, is like has really shifted throughout my life. At one point, I was convinced I was going to be a salsa dancer. When I was young, I was going to be a marine biologist. I became a DJ. I'm also a PhD student. So sometimes I'm juggling a bunch of identities at once, and then other times I've radically shifted in who I um, have become. So there's some flexibility in how I have approached my own identity, um, which I'm trying to bring as one thing that I was told at a meditation once was, don't cling so hard to your identity. We're talking about being in the world. The act of clinging to something is part of what the ego does. I also just saw a talk by Tara Brach earlier today, and she talks about the over controller, which is in essence the ego, the part of us that uh, she talks about the way that we kind of go into a trance on a daily basis, um, trying to keep at bay phenomena that's changing. We want to, that over controlling part of us, the ego, wants to make sure things remain the same, when the truth is that naturally everything's always shifting. And so meditation is a really great practice for being with what is. Um, I also talked a little bit in the session about what I've been learning in Ifa, which is another practice that I'm engaged in, which is African, a Yoruban practice, which is on the one hand being aware of your ori, or I've been learning about the ori, which is your personal consciousness, which is also your character. It could have something to do with who you are in the world, your identity. And then your Ipon-ri, which is your heavenly consciousness, which is something more in line with spirit and Olodumare, Olo, Olodumare, Olodumare, I'm sorry, who is God, or the totality of everything, and the divine creator. So in that structure, there's a similar attention to like your ego, your personality, your character, and then like this other aspect of you. And within that practice, it's about getting you more in line with um, your divine nature. So I thought it was important to share this distinction because what I've been really working on for myself is doing this hard work of confronting how much things have changed. And I know that for a lot of people, that's been their work right now. um, Confronting the reality that is that things will always change no matter what. And there is no such thing as a kind of stability. But then, within those shifts, being more and more aware of what my character is, who I'm developing, who I'm becoming, in every moment we're becoming, and how do I become more close to um, this steady presence that I feel every time I meditate. It's like I know, okay, there's something more than just the thoughts that are rising in my mind, or more than a physical sensation. Like there's something more. My breath itself is a channel into something deeper than who I think I am as Kumi, or the identity that I've created for the public, which is one level of like my experience. So um, the Buddhist practice is a lot about renunciation, which is letting go of the things we have formed attachments to. Um, and that's definitely helped me. Um, Also, just taking my time and being with myself during these difficult moments. One thing I've been going through recently is a friend breakup, which is really difficult because it's triggered so much of unhealed trauma. Um, and I know people are like really sensitive right now, and maybe that has meant that communication has been strained for other people. But it definitely has with me. I found myself wanting to take more time away from people, and also just noticing how sensitive people are right now. Um, I consider myself a highly sensitive person, and the birds are chirping. There's so many birds around my house, and I've become more and more aware of them. It's just amazing to hear them chirping and communicating all day. So I've just felt so much pain over the past couple weeks, or a week or two, over this end of a friendship, and it's triggered a lot of feelings of abandonment and um, feelings of unworthiness. And every day it's like I'm processing it a little more. I'm trying not to, working on not ruminating over it, because here's the truth, everything will shift. Like I said before, um, I've been meditating every morning as a way to work through it, and also praying every night. And I'm going to share a structure for prayer called ACTS, ACTS, which means acknowledge, confess, thanksgiving, and supplication, or ask for what you want. That's really been helping me, is like just developing a stronger relationship to spirit. Um, So yeah, I'm just sharing that to say that I'm still in this process. You know, I thought a few weeks ago that I had reached some level of enlightenment. Like, I felt so powerful like 3 weeks ago. But then, as life tends to, something shifted, and I experienced this loss of a friendship, and I'm really vulnerable over this. But also, you know, I can't control it. I can't control other people. And I think what I'm battling in my mind, or have been, is this idea that what the ego wants to do is say that person's wrong and you're right, or and vice versa, I'm wrong and they were right. When the truth is that those are just stories to attach to something. Um, what happened was the end of our relationship. So it's I'm working through finding closure for myself. It takes a lot of self-compassion. I'm gonna share a self-compassion meditation, uh, and I'll lead a couple meditations on here because I what I've noticed is that's been really healing for me. And also this weekend when I led the body scan meditation, uh, I've noticed that it had an impact. So I'm hoping to become a meditation teacher over time and be able to lead Dharma talks and talk to people. Um, so do teaching within the Buddhist tradition. So yeah, so just feeling the rawness of something shifting like that. Um, I just listened to this talk, like I mentioned, and by Tara Brach. Her last name is Brach. She's a meditation teacher I always go to for meditations about self-compassion. She has them on YouTube. But she told this story. She shared this story, and at the end of the story, well, first of all, she's talking about purposefully learning how to tolerate uncertainty, like how to accept, I'd say, not tolerate, because, but how do you move with the knowledge that things are changing every moment, and let go. She talks about letting go physically. A lot of times in our bodies, we're holding on to so much tension and fear and apprehension of, um, I'm always rapping, fear of things changing. But then also, our mind often just becomes fixated with fixing a problem, or just wrapping itself around a problem and repeating a situation, or becoming attached to something that happened in the past, or anxious about something that could happen and the possibility. So that's what the mind does. Um, it's about meditation can be about learning how to let go. Just let go. Bring ease to the mind and say, it's okay, it's okay. Um, the quote that I wanted to read from Tara Brach was at the end of a story that she shared. She said, "You will lose everyone you love, but the love will always return in new forms." And I thought that was really powerful. When I heard it, I started crying. I was like, it's true. There's no way, though sometimes we might be in these fearful states and experiencing a pain of some kind. Um, love hasn't gone away. Love hasn't gone away. Um, love is going to show up again, and love is always all around you. Um, it's all about being curious enough in the moment to notice when it's happening. There's a lot of generosity and love all around us at all times. So I hope this talk can be a reminder of that. and also just to maybe consider who you are and consider what aspects of you feel are essential to who you are, and maybe what aspects you can let go of. Um, I'd like to talk about archetypes one day. That's something Miriam Hasna talks about. That also comes from Carl Jung, and which are these roles that we might, someone might be the caretaker, the provider, the hero, the healer, the wounded healer. So there's these structures that sometimes our identity has evolved into, and it's about considering what narrative you're playing out in your life and how to, for me, like not move, maybe move less determined by these structures that you've created or we've created in our minds about what it means to be a good person, a virtuous person, because sometimes that might end up being the way that the kind of lifestyle that depletes you. Um, um, yeah, and other kind of identity attachments that we might have that may not be serving us. So that's one thing I want to go over. I also would like to go over, I think in the next video, is grieving. Like, what do people do to let go? Because one thing I've noticed is, though I love my Buddhist practice and my meditation practice, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm disassociating from experiences I'm having, and I actually need to cry, or I actually need to yell, or I have to get it out of my system somehow. One thing I shared last time was that I was in the shower just saying a list of things I didn't like, and really angrily saying, I don't like when this person does this, I don't like that person, I don't like, and just expressing these things that I, as like the caretaker role that I often play in the world. I'm not allowed to express anger, I don't feel, or frustration, and so especially, and it feels so politically incorrect to, oh, you can't dislike someone who is black, or who, there's certain rules I feel like also. um, so that was a way of letting those things go, because afterwards, I felt so silly in a way, because I knew most of what I was saying wasn't true. Like, I don't dislike anyone. I more dislike how I felt in certain situations, and I also feel like I don't give myself the opportunity to express those things. So yeah, I want to talk about grieving, and also we talked a little about journaling last time. It's getting into that practice of letting go through writing, just putting it down on a piece of paper and just knowing that you express that thing that you felt some barrier in expressing, or maybe you didn't know what you felt until you sat down to a piece of paper. So that's another thing I really encourage, like daily journaling, which, yeah, I do it when I can. I don't do it daily, but I think that that's it for now. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments and I'll try to answer them there. I hope this is helpful, and I'll be making at least one video a month for people who subscribe to this Patreon.